Today, the U.S. Supreme Court also issued a ruling on the deportation of Venezuelan migrants sent to the same Salvadoran prison under an 18th century wartime law last month, handing the Trump administration a win. A federal judge had issued a restraining order against the use of the Alien Enemies Act against suspected Venezuelan gang members. In the high court's 5-4 ruling, the court said the administration can resume using the wartime law to deport migrants, but added they must get a court hearing before being taken out of the U.S. A Trump administration decision is causing the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops to end a half-century of partnerships with the government to serve refugees and children. The president of the Conference of Bishops says the heartbreaking decision follows the Trump administration's abrupt halt to funding for refugee resettlement. He says as a national effort, the church cannot sustain the work on its own at current levels or in its current form. The Conference of Bishops will work to find alternative means of support for the people the government has already admitted to the resettlement aid programs. The Trump administration is ordering national parks to stay open during severe staffing shortages. The mandate says that any closures or reduction in hours at parks must first be reviewed by the National Park Service Director and Assistant Secretary for Fish and Wildlife. It's getting pushback from park leaders who say this will slow down the process of closing out of safety due to the weather or maintenance. The national parks also saw the highest number of visitors ever last year, and workers say recent mass layoffs are making it harder to handle the crowds. Beijing throws a monkey wrench into plans to sell TikTok to an American company so it can keep operating in the U.S. Fox's Jared Halpern has more on where a potential deal stands tonight.
If I gave a little cut in tariffs, they'd approve that deal in 15 minutes.
We're learning more about the potential sale of TikTok to an American company and the economic forces at work against it. President Trump told reporters the American government had approved a buyer and a deal was imminent when Beijing slammed the brakes, a retaliation for the new tariffs that went into effect last week.
We had a deal pretty much with TikTok, not a deal, but pretty close. And then China changed the deal because of tariffs.
On Friday, President Trump signed an executive order aimed at keeping TikTok running in the United States for another 75 days, giving White House negotiators more time to get a deal done that would bring the social media giant under American ownership and jurisdiction. Potential buyers are backing the president's move.
Better that this deadline was extended rather than try to force a deal through that might, Congress may not be happy with and might not comply with the law.
But with the White House not backing down from the tariff fight, it's not clear if China will sign off on a deal before the next deadline. And American officials have been clear the app can no longer be connected to the Chinese government if it's going to keep operating in the U.S.
They're all linked. No private company in China does business that doesn't have a direct connection with the Chinese Communist Party.
The Trump administration says it has no intention of renegotiating the TikTok deal, and it's standing by for a response from Beijing. At the White House, Jared Halpern.
Heavy rainfall in Kinshasa, the capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo, has caused severe flooding, resulting in the deaths of at least 33 people, while hundreds more have been displaced. The flooding, which began last Saturday, overwhelmed the city's infrastructure, with the Njili River overflowing its banks and blocking the main national road. The flooding caused widespread destruction, with hundreds of homes and buildings being submerged underwater. With the death toll expected to rise, authorities are racing against time to evacuate and support hundreds of families still trapped in their homes. Many residents are blaming the government for not responding quickly enough to the disaster.
This is the very first time that this kind of thing has happened here in Congo. I was born, grew up, and had my children here in Congo. I have never encountered these kinds of situations. The traditional chiefs are at the root of this. The country is not working.
The flooding hampered access to drinking water, with at least 16 communities being affected. Many people who have been forced to flee their homes have sought shelter in emergency shelters set up by the government. Surveyed the wreckage of their homes, some of the residents recounted the harrowing experiences of survival after severe flooding swept through parts of the Democratic Republic of Congo's capital. Residents described the scene as apocalyptic, with floodwaters reaching chest-deep levels in some areas.
We spent 72 hours with the children, with our families, in the water, without being able to eat. Even at the beginning, there was nothing. In this country, we don't know how to help. And who should we help more than anyone? The people. And more specifically, we're in the capital. We lost everything. We didn't recover anything.
Now, in a video posted on social media, it revealed the devastating aftermath of the severe flooding, with several cars lying damaged on the roads. The flooding in Kinshasa is a stark reminder of the city's vulnerability to natural disasters. In 2022, at least 100 people were killed in similar flooding in the same city. Earlier, the president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, visited flood victims at a gymnasium in Kinshasa, promising to provide assistance to those affected.
Tonight, a slow-motion disaster as widespread flooding swallows more communities across America's Midwest and South.
6 foot of water. This is not standing Tennessee water. This is 6 foot of water.
Late today, authorities in Arkansas and Kentucky announcing 3 more deaths, including a 27-year-old man swept away by floodwaters Sunday, making for 24 people killed by severe weather in the last week. Among them, 9-year-old Gabriel Andrews, also caught in a flash flood while walking to his school bus. Tonight, rescues stacking up. The state of Kentucky getting well over 15 inches of rain in 4 days, a new record.
Remember, this event is not over until the waters have receded.
Some already facing that aftermath.
It's hard, but we're managing. We're okay. You okay? I'm okay. I'm okay.
Shaquana Hart escaped her Hopkinsville home swimming through chest-high floodwater Friday. This is the mom of 4's first time back.
What's the first thing you noticed? The damage. Yeah. Just memories. It's material things. I still have my kids. They're alive.
Devastation in a region already exhausted by days of deadly storms and tornadoes. Dawson Springs, Kentucky, today still largely underwater. The police chief showing us the worst of it.
How exhausted are people here?
Very. They're very exhausted, and our community needs help.
And Maggie Vespa joining us from Clarksville, Tennessee. Maggie, the federal response getting some attention today.
Yeah, Lester, that's right. President Trump has signed emergency declarations in several states, including here in Tennessee and in Kentucky. And today, that state's governor saying the Trump administration has been very responsive, but also blasting cuts to the National Weather Service, which he said saves so many lives.
Meu carro já era lá, cara. Meu carro já foi. Pegou fogo em todos os carros lá já. Todos os carros lá pegando fogo.
Boa, boa, boa.
Ô madrinha, nós tava indo aí, ó. Meu carro tá lá no meio do fogo, ó. Pegou fogo no caminhão, vai explodir todos os carros lá, mano. Todos os carros pegou fogo lá. Meu tá ali. Tá, merda. Bah, que cagada, mano. Ô, nosso carro tá lá, cara. Nosso carro tá lá, olha lá. Ai, cara, meu carro já era lá, cara. Meu carro já foi. Pegou fogo em todos os carros lá já. Todos os carros lá pegando fogo.
Boa, boa, boa.
Ô madrinha, nós tava indo aí, ó. Meu carro tá lá no meio do fogo, ó. Pegou fogo no caminhão, vai explodir todos os carros lá, mano. Todos os carros pegou fogo lá. Meu tá ali. Tá, merda. Bah, que cagada, mano. Ô, nosso carro tá lá, cara. Nosso carro tá lá, olha lá.
A major fire broke out in Paris on Monday, a few miles from the Eiffel Tower. Video posted online showed a recycling plant in the city engulfed in flames as people drove past. Far-off shots of the city showed a large plume of smoke rising out of the skyline. The area's mayor told CNN affiliate BFM TV the building was evacuated and no injuries were reported.
Hundreds of elective surgeries were cancelled and cancer patients went without chemo as doctors today staged their biggest strike in 4 decades. The industrial action comes after 9 months of failed negotiations on pay and safe working conditions.
walking off the wards in Westmead.
Safe conditions. Safe care.
Our doctors in a state of pain.
We are burnt out, so we're walking out.
From Westmead to Coffs Harbour, Tamworth and the doorstep of the Health Department.
Union!
3,500 doctors walked out at 8 a.m. in the biggest strike since 1984.
Doctors don't strike. We really struggle to do this. You know, we're chronically understaffed.
After a failed 11th hour attempt to stop the strike.
I met them yesterday afternoon, but we couldn't get a breakthrough.
Too little, too late after 9 months of negotiations.
They've been drawn out. There has been not one iota of give or of consideration given to the concerns of doctors.
The union pushing for pay parity with other states, 30% behind in some roles. The government has offered 10% over 3 years. New South Wales currently the only state where
an obstetrician who comes into hospital to deliver a baby at night does not get paid for that.
They will be in from midnight till 6 a.m, all unpaid. They've worked the day before. They are expected to work the next day.
We know a gap exists. We're well aware of that gap. What we need more is time to try and resolve that.
The impact felt hardest in our biggest suburban hospitals. 370 elective surgeries cancelled today, 21 short-stay beds closed, 3,000 outpatient clinic appointments postponed, and 486 cancer patients went without chemo.
They have been for about 2-3 hours. I think it's the same as always. It's slow.
I didn't really see that much of an impact, to be honest with you.
This strike will continue for another 2 days. Doctors will hold more rallies before returning to work on Friday, bringing our hospitals back to full capacity. In the meantime, emergency departments will be staffed, but you may need to wait longer.
In terms of urgent care and safe practice, everything will go as usual.
Now, Germany is considering relocating its significant gold reserves currently stored at the U.S. Federal Reserve in New York due to concerns over the reliability of the United States as a partner. Stockpile amounting to 1,200 tons of gold, making Germany's reserves the second largest in the world, has been kept in the vaults beneath Manhattan for decades. However, recent political tensions, particularly with the unpredictable policies, Donald Trump has raised doubts about the security and trustworthiness of the current arrangement. Political figures from Germany's Christian Democratic Union, which is expected to lead the next government, have discussed the possibility of bringing the gold back to Europe, with some even advocating for regular inspections of the reserves. Now, previously, requests to inspect the gold had been denied. The reserves are worth an estimated 96 billion euro and account for 30% of Germany's total gold holdings. While the U.S. vault was originally viewed as a safe location due to its liquidity in times of crisis, Germany's shifting geopolitical stance has prompted a reconsideration in light of the recent U.S. tariffs on the European Union and the broader tension with the Trump administration. German officials are increasingly leaning towards repatriating the gold, or at least relocating it to Frankfurt, where a portion of the reserves is already stored. Some experts suggest that moving the reserves to Europe would reduce dependence on the U.S. and enhance Germany's financial independence.
With President Trump's next round of escalatory tariffs set to go into effect at midnight, the president insists that despite rattled markets and recession fears, he's not considering hitting the pause button.
We're not looking at that.
After the president initially said every country has called to negotiate, President Trump's top advisors are now saying more than 50 countries have reached out. European officials offered to eliminate their tariffs on American-made cars and industrial goods if the U.S. will do the same in return. Despite the market suffering their worst days since the start of the pandemic, the president says he's unfazed by short-term financial pain.
I don't mind going through it because I see a beautiful picture at the end.
Administration officials have also been saying Americans will overlook temporary market turmoil.
Americans who have put away for years in their savings accounts, I think they don't look at the day-to-day fluctuations of what's happening.
But many may be invested. Research from the Federal Reserve shows more than half of American households own stock directly or through investment funds. Top Democrats say the president's tariffs are a self-inflicted wound.
Less than a week after Donald Trump started the largest, dumbest trade war in American history, all the signs say America is heading towards calamity.
For now, most Republicans are standing by President Trump.
And I think you got to give the president the latitude, the runway to do what it is he was elected to do.
Still, there are cracks emerging within the president's party.
If the outcome from these tariffs is really high tariffs from every country on earth against American goods, and really high tariffs from America against goods from every other country on earth, that is going to be really bad for Texas and really bad for America.
Of course, that was Texas Senator Ted Cruz there. Also this morning, the Washington Post is reporting that Elon Musk, one of President Trump's top lieutenants, who this weekend launched a barrage on social media with posts criticizing President Trump's aggressive tariff plan, also made personal appeals to President Trump to rethink those tariffs. He made those appeals directly. The Post cites two people familiar with the matter on that. Of course, Musk's efforts so far, Savannah, have not been successful.
Organizers say millions of Americans took to the streets this past Saturday to protest President Donald Trump and his administration's actions on a number of key issues. Thousands of people attended several protests here in northern Minnesota. Our reporter Matthew Freeman has more details.
According to the Associated Press, over 1,200 hands-off demonstrations took place in all 50 states on Saturday, including multiple protests throughout the state of Minnesota.
Today we have more people showing up than we ever had in 6 years.
I was here in 2016 when we were protesting. This is probably the biggest crowd I've seen yet, and I expect that the crowds will continue to grow.
Reportedly, over 700 protesters picketed along the Central School in Grand Rapids. Another 1,000 took to the streets of Brainerd for their protest, and over 1,200 voiced their concerns in front of Paul and Babe in Bemidji.
It's our turn as citizens to take to the streets and really, show like we're not okay with what's happening.
It means people are pissed. There's a lot of energy. I've never seen anything like this.
The so-called hands-off demonstrations, organized by multiple activist groups, all centered around one common theme.
There have been a lot of interventions by Musk and Trump on things like Medicaid, Social Security, sound economic policy, grants that fund science, vaccine research, immigrant status, First Amendment rights. We still have due process in this country, and Trump and Musk can't take that away from us.
While Trump and Musk were the main focus across the country, protests in northern Minnesota also focused on U.S. House District 8 Representative Pete Stauber.
He won't meet with us. He won't listen to our concerns. And so this is what we have to do in order to be heard.
He isn't showing up for town halls. He'll have selective town halls with pre-selected questions. He refuses to show up. And last time a group of his constituents showed up in Duluth, he called them all paid actors. And I am proud to proclaim that I am receiving $0 for being here today.
Some feel that the actions made by President Trump and his administration are all to gain political power.
We don't want an authoritarian government. We don't want an oligarchy. We don't want a government that serves only the interests of the very rich like Elon Musk. We want a government of the people, by the people, and for the people.
But some can't help but feel personally attacked.
I have an older brother who's trans, and he's engaged to a trans woman, and they're being attacked. They're not safe, and that's my brother. I'm not okay with that. I myself am also queer. I'm attending university right now. I have met so many wonderful international students, like some of my best friends, honestly, and it isn't right what's happening.
An organization known as Indivisible helped organize the rallies for northern Minnesota. I'm Matthew Freeman reporting, Lakeland News.
When asked about the protest, the White House said in a statement that, quote, President Trump's position is clear. He will always protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid for eligible beneficiaries, and that the Democrats' stance is giving Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare benefits to illegal aliens, which will bankrupt these programs and crush American seniors.
You know how I feel about the Gaza Strip. I think it's an incredible piece of important real estate. And I think it's something that we would be involved in, but having a peace force like the United States there, controlling and owning the Gaza Strip would be a good thing. Because right now, all it is for years and years, all I hear about is killing and Hamas and problems. And if you take the people, the Palestinians, and move them around to different countries, and you have plenty of countries that will do that, and you really have a freedom zone. You call it the freedom zone, a free zone, a zone where people aren't going to be killed every day. That's a hell of a place. It's you know what I call it, a great location that nobody wants to live in, because they really don't. And when they have good living, real living, where Hamas and all of the problems they have, the level of death on the Gaza Strip is just incredible. And I've said it. I don't understand why Israel ever gave it up.
Gazans were closed in, and every other place, including in arenas of battle. I mean, whether it's Ukraine or Syria or any other place, people could leave. Gaza was the only place where they locked them in. We didn't lock them in. They're locked in. And what is wrong with giving people a choice?
Iran and the United States are set to hold talks this Saturday in the Sultanate of Oman over Tehran's rapidly advancing nuclear program. This is important for a couple of reasons. The first is that Oman was the site of secret negotiations between Iran and the then administration of U.S. President Barack Obama. Those secret talks helped build the 2015 nuclear deal with world powers that saw Iran agree to limit its enrichment of uranium in exchange for the lifting of economic sanctions. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump withdrew from that deal back in 2018, and in the time since, talks have not been able to get any sort of nuclear deal back on the table.
Mission, at what level the U.S. is represented?
High level, very high level.
And
yeah. We're dealing with the Iranians. We have a very big meeting on Saturday, and we're dealing with them directly.
Now, there is one point of contention right now. Donald Trump has said that these talks will be direct between American and Iranian officials. Iran's foreign minister says there will be indirect talks, likely with the Omanis serving as mediators.
نامه نوشته شده، به دست ما هنوز نرسیده، ولی قرار هست که یک فرستاده‌ای از سوی یکی از کشورهای عربی این رو به زودی در تهران تحویل بده.
This is important because years of indirect talks between the Biden administration and Iran went nowhere, not reaching a deal. And Trump has increasingly warned that a military strike is on the table if Iran does not agree to a new nuclear deal. There are stealth B-2 bombers now stationed at Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, which is within striking distance of Iran. We've also heard from Iranian officials threatening to potentially go after a nuclear weapon if they're threatened, if they're attacked. And all this comes amid the Israel-Hamas war in the Gaza Strip and other Middle East tensions. That makes these talks this Saturday even more important.
President Trump says the U.S. is in direct talks with Iran over nuclear weapons. Iran released a statement overnight disagreeing, calling planned talks, quote, indirect. Trump made his surprise announcement during his meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday. The president said he plans to ramp up those discussions on Saturday. Meantime, officials from Russia, China, and Iran are set to meet today to discuss Iran's nuclear program. In recent weeks, Trump has threatened potential military action against Iran to keep it from developing nuclear weapons.
West Asia is teetering on the edge. U.S.-Iran tensions have reached a boiling point. Military maneuvers, diplomatic standoffs, they've dominated the landscape. Are these dangerous final moves before an unstoppable conflict actually erupts? Our next story puts that into perspective. Take a look.
West Asia stands on the precipice of dangerous escalation as tensions between the US and Iran are peaking. Both nations are rapidly intensifying military preparations, with Iran's armed forces declaring full combat readiness, and the US deploying advanced missile defense systems and heavy firepower across the region. The specter of war grows larger with every passing day. Iran's military leadership has issued stark warnings to adversaries, emphasizing its readiness to counter any threat. Brigadier General Alireza Sabahi Fard, commander of the Khatam al-Anbiya Air Defense Base, asserts that Iran's air defense capabilities, bolstered by indigenous systems, could surprise enemies. Recent upgrades in radar technology and over-the-horizon systems have significantly enhanced Iran's long-range surveillance and early warning capabilities. The U.S. intensifies its military buildup. A second THAAD missile system has been deployed to Israel. Alongside Patriot batteries and stealth bombers stationed at Diego Garcia, the USS Carl Vinson joins USS Harry S. Truman carrier group in the Persian Gulf, projecting power as tensions rise. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has rushed to Washington amidst growing uncertainty, while President Trump blames Iran for the October 7 terror attack on Israel.
We had no problem with the Middle East. Everything was done. We had no problem with Iran. We had no problem with anybody. And then you had October 7th. And that was all because Iran, as you know, was not giving money to anybody because they had no money. Now they have a lot of money. So we'll see what happens.
Moscow is hosting a Russia-China-Iran nuclear-related meeting. Both Russia and China warned the U.S. against military action. Moscow says it is willing to help reduce tensions between Washington and Tehran. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has placed Iran's military on high alert while issuing warnings to neighboring nations, including Iraq, Kuwait, UAE, Qatar, Turkey and Bahrain, not to cooperate with U.S. forces. Tehran asserts that any such cooperation would be treated as an act of hostility with severe consequences. Despite the escalating military postures, Iran has expressed openness to indirect negotiations with the U.S. regarding its nuclear program, preferring intermediaries like Oman to facilitate dialogue. However, Tehran remains steadfast in rejecting direct talks, viewing them as yielding to American pressure. Bureau Report, WION, for this one.